everybody, welcome to the Mana Leak. I'm John as always, and it's time for Crack a Pack Tuesday. Am I finally going to open an Expedition Land? No, I'm not, because we're moving on to Shadows over Innistrad. Battle for Zendikar and Oath of the Gatewatch are long behind us. We are on to Shadows over Innistrad. So we're going to open this pack, see what we get, go through each card, and figure out what we would take pack one, pick one in a draft. I've not drafted this format yet. It is, of course, Tuesday after the pre-release. I won't be drafting until this Friday. So who knows how accurate my pick will be, but I certainly want to hear what your pick would be in the comments down below. But we're going to open this pack, see what we get, and see what we would take. Up first, we have a Survive the Night. Survive the Night is 2 and a white for an instant. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains indestructible until end of turn, and investigate. Not too bad of a trick, although the 3 mana hurts it a little bit. I do want the sort of save my creature trick to cost really preferably 1 mana, but I will go up to 2. 3, just because we get an investigate, is a little bit weak. Certainly not first pick, though. Up next, we have a Stitched Mangler. Stitched Mangler is 2 and a blue for a creature zombie horde to 2/3. It enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls. It doesn't untap until its controller's next untap step. Quite good. Quite good. This, of course, is very similar to Frostlinks. It's got an extra toughness on it. But it does enter the battlefield tapped, which really isn't that big of an issue, especially on turn 3. This is blocking by virtue of the fact that it's freezing an opponent's creature. I really like Stitched Mangler. I would probably first pick it in a really weak pack, but I don't know if those would really exist, so probably not a first pick. Next up, we have Expose Evil. Expose Evil is 1 and a white for an instant, tap up to 2 target creatures, and investigate. Totally fine trick if you're being super aggressive and you just want to keep getting through. On turn 4 or turn 5, when they've got 2 blockers, you tap them and just keep hitting them. And you get a clue out of it as well. This is an investigate card that I do like because 1 and a white is what you would probably pay for this anyways. I doubt you would ever get tap 2 creatures for a single white. So the fact that this investigate is totally free makes this very solid to me. But again, not remotely first pick, and it doesn't go into a controlling deck at all unless it's just like acting as a sort of fog, which really isn't what you want to do. You want to make sure that you're the deck that wants to take advantage of this, namely White Weenies Super Aggro, but not first pick. Up next, we have Drownyard Explorers. Drownyard Explorers is 3 and a blue for a creature human wizard, 2/4. When it enters the battlefield, you get to investigate. You get a clue. This is another example of what I would consider to be a free clue. You would pay 3 and a blue for a 2/4 normally. Paying 3 and a blue for a 2/4 that investigates, that's just gravy. Not first pickable. This is just kind of filler material. You won't cut it too often, but you're not exactly going to go out of your way to get this. If you want a Drownyard Explorer, you're going to be able to get one, probably even on the wheel from this pack, so we're not going to take it. Finally! If you watched my pre-release recap, you know that across 12 packs and playing red in both pre-releases, I've yet to see a Fiery Temper. Finally, I see a Fiery Temper. 1 red for an instant. Fiery Temper deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Madness, single red mana. So Madness, I definitely want to make sure that the card is playable even if I don't get to pay the Madness cost, and this card is totally playable. Kind of hurts that we're paying 3 mana for 3 damage, but that's how Magic works these days. That's how Burn works these days. The fact that it can be a Lightning Bolt if we have Madness is fantastic. I think this card is totally first pickable. There will, of course, be plenty of rares and a good number of uncommons that are better than it, but if you don't have one of those packs, this is totally a first pick card, and I might first pick it just because I saw such a lack of them in my sealed pools just to make up for those days. But yeah, Fiery Temper, super good. Up next, we have Clip Wings. Clip Wings is 1 and a green for an instant at common. Each opponent sacks a creature with flying. You never first pick this, and you don't highly pick it either. This is the card that you take when you're in green, and it's the only green card in the pack. And there's nothing else that you would even slightly consider playing. And then you don't main deck it either. You do put this in the sideboard, and you only bring it in when you see that your opponent has a flyer that you can't deal with. So Clip Wings, get out of here. Farbog Revenant, 2 and a black for a creature spirit, 1/3 Skulk lifelink. This card really overperformed at the pre-release for a lot of people, both at my local ones and from comments that I've seen online. This gets through. This is virtually unblockable in a number of matchups and in a number of board states. And it works as a really, really good blocker. There's just not really too many 3-power creatures out there or higher. 1 and 2 are really the name of the game in this set. It is kind of almost an old core set kind of power and toughness levels on a lot of the creatures. Obviously, the mechanics are way more complex than it would ever be, but power and toughness wise, we're going back a little bit to weaker creatures. I don't think this is first pick though, but I do think you always play it. And I think you do take them mid-pack, but definitely not first pick. Next up, we have Rush of Adrenaline. Rush of Adrenaline is a single red for an instant. Target creature gets +2/+1 and gains trample until end of turn. This is your run-of-the-mill combat trick. If you want one, you take it. You never first pick it. You never second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth pick it even. This is really kind of in the back half of the pack that you're going to take this card, and preferably not even in pack 1 unless it's really the only pick that's left for you. Yeah, it's a run-of-the-mill combat trick. You include it if you have a spot for it. Otherwise, you don't think twice about cutting this. Next up, we have Quilled Wolf. Quilled Wolf is 1 and a green for a creature wolf, 2/2, pay 5 and a green to make it a 6/6 until end of turn. This is solid. This is a 2/2 for 2, which is totally and utterly playable. You'll always play this. You'll basically never cut it. And then later in the game, when that 2/2 is no longer relevant, it can be a 6/6 if you have the mana kicking around, which is totally fine. It's not remotely a first pick, but this is a card that you take when there's a few options in green. Maybe some are sideboard, maybe some are kind of conditional. You take this guy instead, and you'd be pretty happy, and you always play it. But definitely not a first pick. Next up, we have Gloom Widow. Gloom Widow is 2 and a green for a 3/3 creature spider with reach, but it can only block creatures with flying. It can't block the ground guys. That sounds defensive, but this really works as much more of an offensive creature. It's a 3/3 for 3, which is perfectly costed. We're very happy with that. It's a Nessian Courser, basically, for those of you from Theros. And then sometimes it will randomly really hose your opponent's flyers because they're usually 2 power or less. Yeah, totally fine card, not a high pick, but if you want it, if you're in green, it's totally there, and you'll probably always play the first one. Next up, we have a Broken Concentration. Broken Concentration is 1 blue for an instant counter target spell, so it's a cancel. But if you madness it, you can pay more to pay less color. You can pay 3 in a blue. So if you don't have that double blue, you still have a way of casting this if you can discard it. This is much more playable in Sealed, of course, and much more playable in Two-Headed Giant. Much less playable in Draft. You don't really play cancel in Draft. You certainly don't play a 4-mana counterspell in Draft. If you are an incredibly controlling blue deck, you maybe could consider this, but this should be a very late pick. This should be in the last quarter of each packs. You really don't want to go out of your way to take a cancel. It's just not good enough in Draft. Final uncommon, we've got a Stitchwing Scab. Stitchwing Scab is 3 and a blue for a creature zombie horror. It's a 3/1. It's got flying. For 1 and a blue and discard 2 cards, you can return it from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. This is a really nice aggressive flyer. 3/1 for 4 is really nice stats cost ratio on a flyer. The fact that you can bring it back if they manage to kill it, hopefully with removal. If they kill it with something that doesn't die in combat, then you're just returning basically a chump attacker, chump blocker. But if they waste removal on this thing, you're really in a good shape because you got a card out of their hand and you can get this back to the graveyard. You have to pay 2 cards for that, but hopefully you madness them so you're not actually paying it, or hopefully you're just throwing away lands that aren't needed, or maybe you're getting Delirium online, who knows. But all in all, I think this is a very solid creature. I don't quite know if it's first pickable or not. I'm leaning towards no, but flyers are really good in this format, so I'm not totally certain. I'm going to lead towards this not being first pickable, but we'll see how the format shapes up. What's our rare? Our rare is a Markov dreadknight. Markov dreadknight is 3 black for a creature vampire knight. It's a 3/3. It's got flying. For 2 and a black, you can discard a card. You can put 2 +1/+1 counters on Markov dreadknight. I played this guy in the pre-release, in the bad pre-release where I had absolutely 0 removal, and he's fantastic. 3/3/4/5 flyer is fine right then and there. The fact that it can become a 5/5 the next turn, and actually if you hit your land drop, if you play this on curve, you could potentially discard 2 cards, pay all your mana, and make this a 7/7 flyer, which is really crazy. It enables madness, but in a very weak way. You are paying 3 mana, so you'd better hope that you have a pretty cheap thing that you're going to madness out. You'd better hope that it's a fiery temper or something like that. But yeah, Markov Dreadknight is super, super solid. I really like it. It's totally first pickable to me, and can really help out with your madness and your vampires and everything. And our flip card is an Accursed Witch. Accursed Witch is 3 and a black for a creature human. Let me get those clues out of the way. A creature human shaman. It's a 4/2. Spells your opponent's cast that target Accursed Witch cost 1 less to cast. When Accursed Witch dies, return it to the battlefield transformed under your control attached to target opponent. So it's a 4/2 for 4, which isn't the best stats. 4/2s die really, really, really easy. And your opponents can actually kill this even easier because they get a discount on the spells that they cost it. But the trick, of course, is you want it to die because when it comes back, it's an enchantment or a curse. You enchant a player, presumably your opponent. Spells that you cast that target your opponent cost 1 less to cast, so now your spells are easier to hit them. Now it is only them, not their creatures. So I'm talking about things like edicting them or fiery tempering them to their face, etc. But also at the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, that player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So you put a clock on. And not only a clock, not only do they get pinged, but you also go up, which means it's a 2 life point swing. This card was surprisingly good in Sealed, although thinking on it, I don't think it's too surprising because, of course, Sealed is a slow format. It's a format of board stalls. It's a format of, well, I can't do anything, so go. Well, I can't do anything either, so go. But if there's a 2 life loss each time your opponent's passing the turn, that's a pretty big deal. In Draft, I think this is going to go down a fair bit because A, people are going to have better ways of dealing with this. They're going to be able to exile it. They're going to be able to, reliably tap it down or etc. And they're just going to be a little bit more focused on combat. They're not going to get into quite as many board stalls where, they'll take 14 damage over this and just die. So I don't know about Accursed Witch in Draft. I definitely will keep an eye on it because it was surprising how good it was in Sealed, but I will keep an eye on it. Ultimately, I think our potential picks here are the Accursed Witch, the Fiery Temper, of course, which might just be my first pick because I want it so bad after not having any, and Markov Dreadknight. Stitchwing Scab just quite doesn't make the cut for these 3. Ultimately, I think the power of Markov Dreadknight is just something we can't really pass up. 3/3 flyer. If we curve out and hit our 6th land the next turn, potentially 7/7 flyer, just sounds like an absolute beating. The fact that it enables a couple of really good decks, the Vampire deck and or the Madness deck, just is fantastic. Fiery Temper is definitely a close second. Accursed Witch, I think, falls slightly off to the 3rd. But yeah, I'm going to go with the Markov Dreadknight. Definitely let me know what you would have taken in the comments below, as well as up in the corner with the little poll. Would you have taken the Dreadknight, the Temper, the Witch, the Scab, or something else? Let me know for sure in the comments below. But as always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can find me on Twitter at The Mana Leak. That's L-E-E-K, like the vegetable, not the card. And you can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/The Mana Leak. You've already found me here on YouTube. You've got the comment section down below. Please make use of that. As well, if you enjoy my videos, please click the like button and the subscribe button if you have not already subscribed so that you can see the latest videos as they come up. We have a legendary cube draft coming up tomorrow, a top 10 Thursday about Shadows over Innistrad on Thursday, and of course the behind the shoulder draft from the very first F&M with Shadows over Innistrad. So stay tuned for that. Make sure that you are subscribed, like, etc. But as always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, see y'all tomorrow.